Let's talk to our senior elementary students about why sexual orientation is more than just a label. Hi, I'm Nadine Thornhill, sexuality educator. Welcome to my series, Save Sex Ed, where I teach every sex education module from Ontario's Health and Phys Ed curriculum. If you are new, then I'm going to get you to click the eye up there. You can find out what this series is all about. And if you don't want to miss any videos, click the subscribe button down below. Also hit the bell so you will get notifications every time I post. I was hot, so I took off my hoodie. Now I'm in the stripes. The Health and Phys Ed curriculum for grades 1 through 8 outlines the following learning objective for grade 8. Demonstrate an understanding of sexual orientation and identify factors that can help people of all orientations develop a positive self-concept. If you watched the videos about gender, you may remember that there was a learning objective that sounded almost exactly like this one, but about gender. And as I explained in that video, that is because that learning objective and this learning objective are actually the same learning objective when you read the curriculum. And I decided to separate them because gender identity and sexual orientation are not the same thing. For this activity, you are going to need some paper, you're going to need some markers, and you are going to need some newsprint. Before your class or workshop begins, you're going to use your paper and marker to create the following 8 signs: asexual, bisexual, gay, heterosexual, homosexual, pansexual, queer, and questioning. Take these signs, and if you're able to, paste them on the wall around your space, or you can paste them on the floor. Try to leave as much space as possible between the different signs. Once your class or group has gathered, you are going to start the activity by asking them what they think sexual orientation means. They can answer popcorn style, just sort of shout out their answers, and you can capture those answers on your newsprint. Once everyone has given their answers, you can explain that sexual orientation generally refers to the way that people experience sexual or romantic attraction, often but not always in relation to another person's expressed gender. Now, we talked a lot about gender expression in our videos last week, so I will link to that up there and down in the description box below. Next, we're going to do a forced choice activity. And this is one of those activities where, you're going to read out a scenario and then everybody has to choose from a limited set of answers. In this case, the answers are going to be the signs that you have created and posted around the room. So bring your group's attention to those signs and read out the word and give a brief definition of each. So here are definitions that I would typically use for these terms. Feel free to use them yourself. Asexual is a person who generally doesn't experience sexual attraction to anyone. Bisexual is a person who is mainly attracted to guys and gals. I say gals even though it's not my favorite word because it's the only age-neutral term I know for people who identify as female. So, gals. Gay. Now, this is a term that is usually used to describe guys who are generally attracted to other guys. It can also be an umbrella term describing anyone who is generally attracted to someone of their same gender. Heterosexual. Guys who are attracted to gals and gals who are attracted to guys. Homosexual. The term that means anyone who is generally attracted to people of their same gender. I don't hear people use this word very much anymore, and I know that there's a bit of stigma attached to the history of this word, but that is what that word means. Pansexual. Pansexual people are generally attracted to people of multiple genders. Now, how is this different from being bisexual? Well, bisexual folks generally tend to recognize gender as binary, or at least their attraction to folks is binary. Pansexual folks, their attraction is not really limited by the gender binary, so they can also be attracted to non-binary folks, and they can be attracted to people whose gender is fluid and, may vacillate between, different genders. So that is pansexuality. Queer. That is another umbrella term describing anyone who isn't heterosexual and or is not cisgender. Questioning. someone who, isn't sure or is still exploring their sexual orientation. Tell the group you're going to read a short description of a person's relationships and or feelings. Once you have read that description, they have to move to the sign that they feel best describes that person's sexual orientation. Now it's forced choice, so they have to choose something. So our scenario is Jamal really likes Mel. He thinks it might be cool to go out with her. Now there are no right or wrong answers in this activity, but you can invite a couple of students to share why they chose the answer that they did. Next, read out a second scenario that will give more context to the situation. Let them know that after you have read out this second scenario, if they want to change spots, they can. The second scenario is Jamal also heard a rumor that Randall might be into him. Jamal's never really thought about getting with a guy, but Randall's pretty cool and he might not hate that. At this point, some group members may switch to another answer, some may not. And again, you can invite folks to share why they chose to remain in the same spot or why they switched it up. Now tell the group that you're going to read one final scenario. And again, they can move if they want to, or they can stay in the same spot. Jamal knows that he could ask out either Randall or Mel, but he's a little bit scared. He really likes the idea of, maybe holding hands or being physically close, even kissing, but anything beyond that really doesn't appeal to him at all. And once again, you can ask your group to, share their thoughts, whether they chose to switch or whether they chose to stay in the same place. Now, if you want to try this exercise again with a couple of other scenarios, I will have some available for you on my website, NadineThornhill.com. It's up there and in the description box below. Explain that terms like, bisexual or asexual or straight or gay or pansexual or queer can give us a sense of a person's sexual orientation. In reality, romantic and sexual attraction are often more complex than that. Words describing sexual orientation can be really useful because they give us a language to talk about, how we experience attraction or even love, but they are not rigid terms with fixed definitions, and they don't apply in the same way to everyone that uses a particular word to describe their sexual orientation. Finally, explain that sexual orientation is about how people feel. It's not strictly about what people do or who they have sex with. So, for example, a person may be bisexual, but if they get married to a partner of a different gender and choose to be monogamous with that person for the rest of their life, that doesn't mean that they are suddenly straight. They are still bisexual. It's not uncommon for youth at this age to experience sexual or romantic attraction, and so some of them will be at least getting a sense of their sexual orientation. And there are other youth at this age who just know. Now, if you're a parent or caregiver and your child comes to you and they name their sexual orientation, taking an affirming approach, validating them no matter what that orientation is, increases the odds that your child will have, better mental health, will be happier than kids whose families do not accept their sexual orientation. There are also a lot of youth who aren't experiencing sexual or romantic attraction yet, or they don't have a good sense of their sexual orientation. Now, because our society very much tends to treat heterosexuality as the default, something that we sometimes do as parents and caregivers is we just assume that our kids are straight or that they are going to have heterosexual relationships unless they tell us otherwise. Now, if you have that bias, which I certainly do, try to be aware when you're making assumptions about your child's sexual orientation and try as much as possible not to put that on them, because if it turns out that they are not heterosexual, if it turns out, that they're asexual or gay or queer or anything else, it can be harder for them to come out or feel comfortable talking to us about it if for their entire lives we've just sort of been operating on the assumption that they are straight when they're not. It's just one question today. What do you think people my age get wrong about sexual orientation? There has been a real evolution in the way that people in our society understand and talk about sexual orientation since I was in 8th grade. Now, when I was a 13-year-old, I didn't really understand very much about sexual orientation at all. And when I listen to 13-year-olds today, like I said, their understanding is much more sophisticated than mine was, and they seem to know a lot more. So I love this question because it gives you a chance to sort of gauge where your child is in terms of their understanding of sexual orientation. And if your child is anything like mine, they will be thrilled to share their perspective if it means telling you why you are wrong about stuff. There are endless resources to help us talk to teens about sexual orientation. But today I'm going to point you to just one. It is from scarleteen.com, of course, because I love that site so much, as you know, if you watch these videos on the reg. It is an article on their site called Rainbow Connection Sexual Orientation for Everyone. Now, this is like a long article, and it gets into all sorts of different aspects of sexual orientation, but it's written in, plain, easy to understand language, and it really gives a fantastic overview of not only, terminology around sexual orientation, but how people might experience those sexual orientations, and how sexual orientation, can fluctuate, it can change, it can evolve, it can be complex. Like, they just get into so much. It's such a great article. So I will link to that down below. And if you, sort of feel a bit at sea and you don't know how to talk about all of this, I really recommend starting with this article. In the comments below, tell me a good memory you have from when you were in grade 8. So one of my favorite memories from grade 8 is our class went on a school trip to Boston and environs. And one day we were visiting Salem, and while, most of our class had gone to a museum and they were learning about the Salem witch trials and like witchy things, my best friend and I decided instead we would just walk around Salem. And it was such a pretty little town with, all of these, colorful Cape Cod style houses, and we wound up down by the water, and, we just like sat on some rocks and had this really great talk. It's still like one of my favorite memories to date. That's all for now. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you soon. Bye.
You can help me continue creating free sex ed content by supporting me on Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you'll get access to all sorts of goodies, so head on over to patreon.com/Nadine Thornhill or click the link down in the description below.